What's up, everybody? Richard Dolan here for a courageous conversation.
Well, man, today you're right. There's no going back.
How do you feel the weight of that desire?
I have been there for a while.
Story's still being written, and you cut the story short. As they say, I'm playing with house money.
They said, neo-fascist.
You can't imagine, Richard. I've heard everything now.
But I'll tell you what, you ain't never buying your time back. Value your time.
Nothing can humiliate me. I've already done that.
He said, you taught me there was more to life than pain, and that kind of opened the door for thousands and thousands of kids.
Like, you just show up no matter what. This is an opportunity to kind of delve into yourself and actually pull out what you might have in there.
It forced me to think about life after basketball.
And it's funny because people need to laugh.
You just pass it through, brother.
Once you start a courageous conversation, there ain't ever going back to an ordinary one.
How fantastic is it that I'm here sitting with you, a man that I've known and laughed because of for over 20 years. And what a delight to be getting to know you, getting to charm you, being charmed by you, the great Joe Avati. First and foremost, how have you been?
I've been good. Did I tell you that you smell good?
No, we've had a running joke that I smelled good.
Yeah, when someone invents a way that you can smell through the lens, and they probably, I don't know how that's going to happen one day. It may happen, I don't know. If you find a way to smell something through a lens, that's just going to change everything, isn't it?
It brings me back to the times when we used to have the scratch and sniff stickers. You remember those things?
Oh, yeah.
We probably got really diseased by that. I'm sure that will come out in years to come.
Yeah.
But back to you. I mean, it's so great to catch up with you.
Thanks, mate.
I know that you're not just going through two incredible tracks of life that is both funny, but also financial and practical, and we'll get to both. And I know that viewers at home are wondering what that might mean, but that's code for stay tuned, much more to come. But I know you've been great. Tell me, what is it that right now has got you so excited about the next chapter ahead for you, Joe?
So about 2 years ago, I actually started writing comedy. I know this sounds funny. I know this might sound weird to the people who know what I do, and because I've been doing it for close to 30 years. But I never sat down with a blank piece of paper and said, let's start again. It was always, I'm going to get a little bit of this and I'm going to get rid of those jokes. I'm going to write some new, but I'll keep my main ones and I'll bring those into the new show. I might let that one go. It was a hard decision. It was like, hey, get all the best material you got, throw it out, start again. And I did that and I won Comedian of the Year, this year.
Amazing.
So that is exciting me. So the fact that I've been doing this for 30 years almost, and I've just, as far as I'm concerned, started to become a comedian, and in the start I won Comedian of the Year, I'm excited about that. Wouldn't you be?
Of course I would be, and that's why we're here. I think what's exciting is that for a lot of people who've now discovered you thanks to the invention of social media,
Yep.
because before, when you broke out, social media was not a thing. I mean, you're talking about times when people would find out about you by way of CD or even cassette tape.
Burning cassettes onto CD. But I was the one of the first internet millionaires because I broke out on Napster. Do you remember Napster? So Napster was just a file sharing program for audio. That's what launched my career in North America in 2001.
Yeah, that was a big breakout year for you.
Massive.
Yeah, but what's interesting about all this is that when you talk about just the origination of what's got you re-excited about what's ahead, what a lot of people don't realize is that you're really, quite frankly, a scientist at heart.
Yeah.
With the 2 degrees that you've got, you're really a food scientist, if I'm not mistaken. It's possible that a big part of just who you are is you're really an artist full of expression, whether it's food or humor. Would you agree?
Absolutely. And bringing the science elements into it, it makes you understand this craft because there is a science to it. There is a science to comedy. There's a craft to it, but there's a science to it. And when you can, well, look, one of the things that makes a great comedian is to be able to see patterns. Right? When you can see a pattern, when you're mimicking someone, you need to see a pattern that somebody has, a characteristic that someone has repeated over and over and over, which is a pattern. And then you have to mimic it. And it's the same as when you produce comedy, when you write comedy, you have to see a pattern, and that's what people are going to expect. And then you deliver a punchline, which is totally the opposite to that. And that's what makes things funny. That's one of the techniques.
Look, I love that so early in the conversation, we're diving deep early, and I love it because it's both scientific and even, dare I call it, ontological. You know, just moments before we went live and on this particular recording, I saw you interact with a group of people. And I mean, not just any ordinary group of people, but very established professionals, if I may. Yeah. And you're spot on. I watched you, I observed you interacting with people from different parts of the world where you recognize the pattern, but I also observed you as finding and locating the thing that would actually pull them in, almost like finding through a tackle box, if you were to be fishing, the right lure that would hook someone. Is that true?
Exactly. That's exactly what I did.
And it's amazing that most people, I think, conversational, whether you're a comedian or just a simple human being wanting to be conversationally effective, we rarely actually pay attention to what gets someone's attention. I feel like we might be lazy listeners. But being a comedian, you're actually committed to what gets people responding, yeah?
Well, absolutely. And in this business, you know how people are going to respond every 20 seconds. See, it's not, I don't have to, see, if I'm releasing a video online, I have to firstly record it, then I have to edit it, then I have to release it, then I have to wait for likes, comments, shares. What I do, if I have an idea now, and I've come up with a gag now, and I'm working tonight, I will go tonight and test it out. And I will know, right? Like right now it's 5 o'clock in the afternoon. I will know at 8:30 if that idea has worked or not, immediately. And I will not have one person give me a view. If I've got 1,000 people, I've just got 1,000 views all at once. Immediate response at once, and I know.
Have you ever been so vested in an idea or a concept, even dare I call it a joke or punchline, not to diminish or the demeanor of what you do, and see it fall flat for some reason and be disappointed?
Yeah, well, most of the ideas that you have fall flat. So it's like new comedians. They ask me, can you give me some advice? And the greatest bit of advice I can give a new comedian is get up there and try your gag, or try out. Normally, when you do tryout nights, it's 5 minutes. If you're funny for one of those 5 minutes, you've got what it takes. You just now need to find another 89 of that 1 minute. Wow. And you now have your show. So if you can do it, if you can make them laugh once, even though the next 4 minutes you've lost them, doesn't matter. Focus in on what made that 1 minute happen and make 89 of those, and you've got your show.
Do you ever find yourself offended if the audience from one city to another doesn't laugh at the same joke that seemed to have been funny in another?
You can't be offended. You just have to go, why doesn't that work? And it's really interesting how I always use Australia as a base. And I go, right, everyone's laughing at that particular gag. But then you take that gag and do it in different parts of the world, and they laugh differently. I'll give you an example. So I talk about how my dad is very different with me I talk about how my dad is very different to my daughter and my son than he is with me. So my dad was on the phone with my daughter and he said to her, I love you, I miss you, right? And I'm proud of you. And I was like, what? Yeah, I love you, I miss you, and I'm proud. I've never heard these words ever. And then the punchline is, once my dad said he missed me when he went to whack me, and I don't. That's the punchline, okay? Now, if I do that joke in Australia, I get laughs, claps. If I do that joke in England, I say, my dad never said, I miss you, I love you. You get like poor little baby, right? And I wasn't expecting that. I was expecting to get the reaction that I did in Australia. So now I have to change it when I do the shows in England, and I have to say, me and everyone else in this room never got, I'm proud of you, I love you, and I miss you. So that all of a sudden includes everyone else, instead of just making it about me, which is going to evoke that, oh. So
you've got these cultural nuances that you're constantly dealing with from one country or city to the next.
Yeah. And I also find when I'm working in North America, when I do shows in Los Angeles or Vancouver, they're a lot more politically correct and sensitive. As I move over, because the tour I did last year, I started in Vancouver, went to LA, and I zigzagged and I went in the middle of Canada and then down into Chicago and then back up again. And I worked my way all the way across to Toronto and New York. And as I did that, and I zigzagged and zippered, I call it zigzag and zip it across North America, the reactions changed. And the further I got to the West, the more I can just say it whenever I want it.
Well, this is largely why in the world of comedy, in the universe of the laugh makers and the laugh machinists, if I dare say, you're revered as one of the very bravest of them all, because you do just that. There's no rhyme or reason or a scientific approach to executing your comedy. Most comedians would actually say that what you do, quote unquote, is actually quite dangerous because you don't stay in comfort zones. Do you ever find that you're the kind of man that likes to play outside his comfort zone?
Yeah, that was one part of the new Joe, if you like. The new show, the new Joe is let's push the envelope. This is an interesting thing, and this is the question that I get asked all the time. How do you deal with political correctness? Do you have to pull back? In fact, I've gone the other way. And I thought, let me challenge myself. Let's see how far I can push this. Let's see how far it gets to the edge. And then bring them back. And you'll see when you come and see the show, I push people and then I push it and then so in 1 second you're going to go, oh, geez, where's he going with this? And then, oh, wow, he got us back.
I love that.
And I love that dynamic. I love working right at the edge and then bringing it back. And then
For those who are watching this conversation, my dear friend Joe Avati, I know what you're talking about is the new tour that's coming up when I was your age, which is not just based on the very sentiment of looking back, not just at all things historical, but nostalgic in our childhood memories. But you've also got a children's book named Sane, which we'll get to in a moment. But back to the point, because I want to make sure I just really underpin something that you said that was very, very important. I'm grateful and I'm thankful that you do push the envelope, because I feel like, and I think many people viewing you and following you and championing you, listening to you, following you, they would appreciate that you do just that. Because it feels like comedy is the last avenue that's available to us to really make light of very hypersensitive conversations. Do you feel that way, or do you feel like you do censor some parts of your comedy still yet or at all?
So the way that I censor my comedy is I don't swear, right? And I've got jokes that whilst they're clean, they push the envelope too much. And even though I know my audience think the way that I do, I don't say them. Because even though I know that they would laugh, and I know I've tried to gag on my audience individually and they laugh, if I was to put them into an audience with everyone else and said the same gag, they probably would say, no, Joe, we don't want you to go there. So I don't do that. So that's the way that I censor it. But I do push it, because as far as we're concerned, political correctness does not belong in comedy. It's like having an occupational health and safety officer at the boxing. It's pointless. And we are the last bastions of truth, if you like, because our job is to walk the fine line, to say the things that everyone thinks, but no one has the guts to say. And that's where I like to draw the line. That's where I work now, in that space there.
I like it, and I want to just say thank you for that, because some people could argue that even in music, and in particular perhaps R&B or hip hop, it seems like it's one of those territories of expression that's like, well, that's music, that's art. Rarely is it that people recognize that comedy too is an extension of art. It's in the domain of poetry and authorship and expression. And even though it could sometimes be politically insensitive or has its own nuances, they're really the same. They're as music or as art. In your world, it feels like the world needs Joe Avati more than ever before. Now, as a dad to young children, do you feel this to be true?
Absolutely, because I'm concerned about some of the things that are going on in the world right now, specifically about some of the ridiculousness of gender identity politics. Okay? Now, I can get in trouble just by saying that. I can get in trouble. Now, and you've got to be careful. Why do you have to be careful? Because then people just think that what you're doing is having a go at someone who's gay no. Nobody in our generation, now I'm 50, okay, I'll be 50 in a couple of months. Nobody in our generation has got an issue with kids being different. And then we're different to our parents who are different to their grandparents, okay? So every generation changes. We've got no problem with you kids being different. We have a problem when you are ridiculous. That's where, and nobody calls it out. You know, all this discussion, oh, men can have babies. No, they can't. Enough. Enough of the ridiculousness. You want to be who you want to be. You're an adult and you want to change your body. You're an adult. You do whatever you like. Don't bring it to my kids. My kids don't need, who are 11 and 3, don't need to hear about this because their minds are not mature enough. And most people are not mature in their mind until they get to about 25. They should not be exposed to this kind of stuff at that age. Forget it. Forget it. And if people don't put a stop to this, where's this going to end? Right? That's what I feel, and I talk about it, and I've got no problem in saying it to your camera or to your audience.
No, I think what's important is that you're fortifying the underpinning to the importance of why Joe Avati's next tour, when I was your age, is really the restoration, if I may say, the reclamation of really finding people's inner voice. Because it sounds like to me, based on some of the time that we've spent so far, some of it on camera and some of it which was before camera, and of course a few days earlier, where we both spent much time smelling each other. But all kidding aside, that's a different story. But all kidding aside, is what was interesting is that I just feel so good about the world needs the courage to hear just the truth of what we've been thinking, but are too afraid to say it.
Right, and I get that every time I do the show. I say that people say, they say two things.
Wow, you're so good looking in person.
No. No, they don't say that at all. They thank me for saying what they think, and they thank me for not swearing. But what's interesting, Richard, is when they thank me for not swearing, they say it, they whisper it, they go, "Thanks for not swearing." Like it's they don't want anybody to hear. Okay, so essentially what my show is doing, I am speaking on behalf of the silent majority who are being dictated to by the loud minority, if that makes sense.
It does make sense. That's why someone's thanking you under a whispered voice and lower tone for thanking you for doing things that I think should be the norm.
Everybody's having this discussion right now. Everyone's having this discussion about how the world is going crazy, especially in respect to the ridiculous parts of gender identity politics. There's ridiculousnesses, okay? Where men and women can just change. Oh, today I'm a man, tomorrow I'm a woman. No. Where are we going with this? Okay? You are opening up a can of... You're playing with Mother Nature. And that's a fierce thing to play with, okay? And so I don't want my children exposed to that. And so I speak about it. Now, this is a discussion, Richard, that is happening behind closed doors. This is a discussion that is happening amongst trusted friends. This is not a discussion that people have openly, right? And not in the media because for fear that people will bring you down and cancel you, okay? I'm not afraid of being cancelled. In fact, I'm Italian. We invented cancel culture. Think about it. If you're married into an Italian family, so you understand. If one of your best friend's sons got married and you weren't invited to the wedding, what are you going to do when your son gets married? Cancella.
That's it.
You're going to cancel them. Yeah. We've been cancelling people for years, Richard.
It's so true. It's so true. But what I love about what you're saying is, and it rings so true, is as much as you keep talking about the R word, this R word of being ridiculousness, I love, but I think so true to your nature. And I think the nature of what we are missing in the bedrock of culture is the other R word, is respect.
Right.
And when you look at respect, I mean, I shared this story with you earlier on that my son had held a post-prom party. Yeah. And I was blown away by how many kids, not only that turned out in my backyard, but how many of them had actually took the time to spit their gum out and not into any particular reciprocal. In other words, they didn't throw their garbage out. They actually used the grounds as litter. Wow. Now, in our time, we would watch our fathers. Yeah. If they had to dispose of any phlegm, they would reach in their pocket, pull out a napkin, and spit in a napkin out of respect for the ground that they walked on. Yeah. And so you start to see that what you're speaking to, this is a very courageous conversation. That's why the show is called Courageous Conversations.
Right.
What's courageous about it is what you're saying is so important and needed.
Yeah.
Not that it's bravery in action. It's no, we need to return to a respectable default position to really just get our moral compass flat again.
Yeah, and at the same time, I've got to be, I've got to say, look, you know what, the world progresses, people progress. Whether ideas move ahead. I've got to be careful in what I say that, for that I don't get taken as some sort of a prude either. Because, I'm all for people being different. In fact, I think the richest person in the world is not the person who's got the most amount of money. The richest person in the world, as far as I'm concerned, is the person who has the most diverse group of friends in their life. I've got friends from all walks of life all over the world, and I'm fortunate that I have that. But when things get ridiculous, when you're talking about kids making decisions about their body, which is permanent and irreversible. And that, my friend, is something that children should not be exposed to. And, there's a reason why children have to wait until they're 18 to make certain decisions. So why is it, especially in this country here, you can be 15 years old, go to your doctor and say that I want to transition, or I feel like a boy, or I'm a girl, and the doctor can then start this transitioning without the consultation of the parents? My friend, this is criminal. Not just ridiculous, this is criminal.
Well, meanwhile, you can't drive until you're 16.
You can't drive till you're 16, you can't vote, you can't make major decisions in your life, and you're telling me that this is not a major decision? Mate, this is probably one of the most important decisions that you would ever have to make if you find yourself in that situation.
Well, listen, this remains to be a courageous conversation, and one we can expand over some deeper time. But let's pause for a moment and ask a deeper question that's more about you and less about where we are as a society, because that's going to be a conversation for the ages. When did you first discover, Joe, that you were a funny guy?
Ooh, that's a good question. I think it was at university. No, maybe before that. When I was at school, I would make smart-ass remarks every now and then. Nothing too crazy. Definitely wasn't a funny guy at school. It was when I was at university, I think it started to come out, because I would be at parties, at university parties, making fun of the lecturers, impersonating lecturers. I had a knack for jokes, for telling jokes, old jokes. And that's when I started to realise, hey, you know what? Yeah, okay, I can be funny. That's the first inkling that I had.
When did you make the decision to become a professional comedian?
Yeah, sure. Okay, so I had an idea about doing a show, a one-man show and I got all my English stand-up and all my Italian stand-up, and I married them together. And that took off in Australia. And I thought, right, okay, now we're at the point where we can leave the day job and we can leave food science and pursue this, pursue it permanently. And I've never looked back.
How much do you think of who you've become as a comedian was largely shaped by, or maybe if I dare say, this is now I'm going to be more courageous here, was constrained by growing up in Australia versus having grown up in America or Canada or Italy for that matter? Do you think that your style and your view on commercializing yourself as a comedian would have been different had you not grown up in Australia?
Yeah, sure, because in Australia, part of our sense of humour is to what we call take the piss.
Take a piss.
Take the piss.
We'll take the piss.
So we're very self-deprecating Australians. Okay. So, the North American sense of humour is very different to the Australian sense of humour, which is very different to the British sense of humour. So it's okay for us to have a go at ourselves. That's one way that we deal with things in Australia, with each other, and so self-deprecating humour is a big thing. So what I did is I started to be self-deprecating about being the son of an Italian. And that is what my whole show was about. And then I brought that over to North America. And what fascinated people in North America was, here's this guy with an Australian accent who breaks down and starts speaking Italian. Like, what? Not only Italian, Calabrese, the Calabrese dialect. That freaked people out. I was like a freak show for a while. And so that had a big part to play with my success in North America.
Do you feel like maybe as a result of really aging like a fine wine that's been decanting for 20 plus years, that given how multicultural all the countries have become, given, borders have fallen and immigration is occurring, and not just in Canada, but the US and abroad, do you feel like people's receptiveness and ability to understand and follow your course of thinking in comedy has increased?
Oh, absolutely. It's amazing because obviously when I started, it was mainly only Italians that came. And in certain parts of North America, it still is only Italians that come. But in Australia, like if you ask who's in the audience, Italians only make up 50% of the audience these days. Now you get a lot of Asians, Indians, obviously Greeks, Lebanese, Maltese, Turkish, Croatians. Everybody comes. And even the Anglos, especially of a certain generation, they're like, hey, you weren't the only one who copped a beating. Backhand. We're not talking about child abuse. We're talking about a bit of a smack on the bum, sort of strict, like that. They're like, our dads did the same thing. Irish dads were crazy too. It wasn't just Italian dads. So there's that underlying current, and that's more generational than it is cultural.
And that's what's exciting about your upcoming tour, which is not only like selling out fast, you're adding more shows to most of the cities that you're touring. What's amazing, I think people are really grappling at the opportunity of really reconciling with their childhoods and vicariously living that through you. How much do you feel of your comedy in the show is likely therapeutic for people as a result of you walking them through memory lane?
100%, because what happens is so sometimes, especially the youth, they don't entirely feel Canadian or American or Australian or British, and they don't entirely feel Italian, because when they go to Italy, they go, tu sei un americano. You're not Italian. And in fact, we cop a lot of abuse, Italian comedians or Greek comedians, from the Italian nationals or Greek nationals, going, we're sick and tired of you guys saying that you're Italian and making us look bad. Well, we're not. I'm an Italian Australian, because it's different. But when you don't entirely feel Italian or you don't entirely feel Canadian, and we're Italo-Inglese, and here comes this guy who describes your life, all of a sudden you make people feel that they belong. When you can give someone a feeling of belonging, mate, they have an affinity to you and an affinity towards you for a very, very long time.
Well, that's the big comment I hear across your fan pages and some of the chat rooms, your followers across Instagram and all the other social media platforms, is that people really find themselves being described by you with your voice. You must pick up fanfare every single time you speak from coast to coast and around the world. Would that be accurate?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a genuine, it's a genuine love that people have, because, I'm not Mick Jagger. I'm not a rock star. I'm not talking about a lifestyle. My comedy, the content of my comedy isn't rock star, after parties, sex, drugs, rock and roll. I'm talking about growing up with mum and dad and nonno and nonna. I'm talking about going and do the visits to the other relatives and not being allowed to touch the biscuits. I'm talking about receiving the pinch under here if you looked at a biscuit when you went to, these are the real life things that I'm talking about here. I'm talking about never having GPS and having the street directory and following the street directory and the main road getting caught in the corner of the page. And all of us, you can hear the audience go, oh my God, yeah, I forgot about that. Wow, do you remember? And that is what I do. I bring people back to a place where they felt good, but with details that they totally forgot about. They go, how does this guy remember all this stuff?
So I brought my phone into view of the cameras because I want you to know that I did some research before we sat down. And one of the things, a couple of statements that people make about you, Joe Avati is one of the last standing historians who uses comedy as his medium to help people remember the lost causes of childhood. Right. Other people would say here, let me just scroll up here. One person had said, through Joe's incredible accuracy of comedy, he helps me recollect memories that I've actually long suppressed. and wish to have forgotten, but glad to have now recalled.
Yeah, right.
What's amazing is that
that person's probably in therapy too, by the way.
That's probably true. But what's fascinating is that most comedy acts, if I dare say that, not to belittle you or anyone in the world of comedy, they're usually a finite experience. Someone attends a show and they buy themselves a drink and they watch someone perform for 60, 90, or 120 minutes, should you be so blessed. But it sounds like based on all the fans and the followers and those who've been so faithful to provide commentary about your shows of past and recollections of what you're doing, the effects of what you do is long lasting.
Yeah.
How does that land for you?
I don't think about it. There's a lot that I do that I don't think about. Like, okay, that's nice, great. You feel like that? Good.
Is that the Australian in you or the comedian in you? Because there's a gravity about how people are speaking about the effects and the impact your comedy has on their lives.
Yeah.
I mean, this is not like just watching a Netflix show or going to the movie theater for an hour and a half and saying, that was lovely, let's go home. Yeah. They're recalling a wonderful memory because of you.
And not only that, but the grandparents, more when I first started, the grandparents would say to me, thank you, because the grandchildren were moving away from the grandparents because the grandparents broken English, the kids are born speaking English. There was they were bored. They didn't want to go to Nonna's house. Because Joe Avati came along, they want to now hear Nonna speaking like Joe, because that's what Joe does. He impersonates Nonna. So the grandparents would say to me, "Thank you for doing what you're doing, because of what you're doing, my grandkids are now they're swaying back home. They want to come and see Nonna. Nonna's cool again." So thank you for doing that.
You see, and that opens up the last point I want to make as our time is wound down, and I know you've got to get to many things, but what I would love to say, Joe, is that you're the last standing great preservationist of values and core beliefs that have been lost in the mix, whether it's because of the geopolitical events or whether it's because of the difference of opinions and the things that we cited in the duration of this conversation. But being a great preservation means getting people represenced to the core values of what makes a family tick. And the traditional family unit, with backhands included and gardens to boot, do you feel the weight of the possibility of a responsibility of helping restore people's relationship to the family unit? Do you feel it? Do you sense it?
I don't necessarily place weight when I write a show on that, but I know that the effects of it are that. So that's important. I know that. I mean, in many aspects. I mean, there was a lady who said to me, "My husband was riddled with cancer. All we wanted to do is see him laugh one last time. We played him your CD. He managed to crack a smile. That was great for us." There was another guy, a parent who said, our son died tragically. We weren't able to laugh. You were the next phase of our healing process because we decided to come to the show. In fact, one lady said, I couldn't, my husband wouldn't come. I said, I need to come. I came, I laughed, I started healing. I'm back at your next show because he needed to come. Now, she wrote me this letter in the bathroom after the show. So I could see she handwrote this note, and some of the words were blotched out from water because she was crying as she was writing the message. And I still have that letter. And she had to wait in line, and she goes, I finished the show, I brought my husband, it was the first time I saw him laugh, I've just gone to the toilet, the bathroom, or you call washroom, I've written this note, I waited in line, I had to give it to you because I needed you to know what you've just done for my family. That's a wonderful thing. Another couple said our son was estranged to us because he felt that we were the only family who did this, and why he couldn't understand why he had to be in a family that was so weird. He came to the show. He realized that it wasn't just this family, that they're all like that. He now talks to us. Thank you. It's little things like that that mean a lot to me.
Well, speaking of meaning a lot to you in the time that we've got left, what I love about your trajectory at this stage and state in your life as a young dad and as you round out the age of 50, what I love about you now optimally commercializing your thinking and your, dare I say, scientific approach to causing and creating humor, laughter, and connection, I love that you're infusing it in your approach to designing homes. Yeah. And how you approach architecture, and even in fact how you create living space. Mm-hmm. You know, your home, the one you just recently sold, was actually voted one of the coolest places to live in all of Australia.
So the fourth coolest home in Australia.
So immerse our friends watching this interview and of course listening along lines of our podcast. You know, share with them what does it mean to have been the curator of one of the coolest pads in all of Australia?
Well, I didn't set out to do it. All I did was to set out to make a home comfortable for me. And I wanted every space to be great because I like to move around to different rooms to get creative. Sometimes I need to go into the library. Sometimes I need to stay in bed. Sometimes I need to go to a dark room. Sometimes I need to be completely like complete darkness to think of something, just to give me that inspiration somehow. Like sometimes I like to walk, sometimes I go walking and I get inspiration. And so I thought, let me create every room to be something special, and I did. And in this new home that I'm building, I thought, do I buy a home with what I want? And I looked and looked and looked, and I found that there was not one home who had every single element of what I wanted. So I thought, well, there's only one way to create that, and that's build it myself. I spend a lot of time in wellness spaces, and wellness is the way to go in the future. We need people love watching movies, so we need a great theatre room. I've got my studio. I have a wonderful, because a lot of people are getting back to creating things at home. So I've got a space where I can create and make things, in terms of having a kitchen space. The wellness area has got everything to do with wellness. Not only does it have a gym, but it's got a steam room, it's got a spa, it's got a cold plunge, a hot plunge, a sauna, a lap pool. Okay, you have to be able to, not everyone has the possibility to do that, but if you do, then, look closely at what I'm doing.
But what I like about that is, as our viewers are learning more about, you're a multi-dimensional figure. That you've got comedy on one side. As I started this entire conversation, that there's two dimensions to Joe Avati. One is the comedy, the author, the writer, the curator of great comedic approaches to nostalgia and remembering wonderful stories. The other dimension to you, though, is this man who understands through the lens of science, but with the application and experience of humor, how important living your life fully and within all the possibilities that are available to you by curating a space that induces connection, that induces fun, adventure, collaboration in the kitchen and outside the kitchen. And it sounds like that's the home that you're building.
That's right. Look, if you want to know about life, ask someone who's lived it, okay? I think that's very important. And what a lot of young people fail to do is to listen to the people who've been there. When people say to you, when your dad or your mum or someone in the elder says to you, trust me, wait till you get to a certain age, you will know what I'm talking about. Kids don't listen often enough, and they think they know everything. And, for me, it's not about going out anymore. Going out is only going to be for so long. What life is really about happens at home. The family at home, around the home. Everything really revolves around that. When you have stopped going out and stopped living a shallow life and a materialistic life, when you have kids and you realise that really that's what life is about, then you start to build everything around that.
Well, that's what I love about the fact that, and I might be letting the cat out of the bag a bit early, but I'll maybe just plant it as a seed if you don't mind. I love that in the spirit of reclaiming and recreating the family unit, you've chosen real estate, development, architecture, and design as the vehicle to be able to channel your passion for design, your addiction to family, and your obsession with family connecting always through food, through dining, through entertainment, through wellness, through longevity. So I know that the world's just about to get a sense of your approach to architecture and design through real estate developments abroad and domestic. How exciting is that for you?
It's very exciting because like one thing I love to do is when someone says, "Oh, I'm going to Spain." Oh, look, I've got to send you my list. I get to send you my list of the best places to go in Barcelona, where to eat in San Sebastian. I love doing that. Not everyone follows it, so I've stopped following up on people. I say, listen, here's your list. You do whatever you want. You can go to one place, you can go to all of them. Do whatever you want. But I need to give you my list because I know that I've done my research and I've curated the best places. And it's the same with the home. I'm going to give you my ideas. You tell me how you want to live your life. I will design a home or an area of function how I think is going to be best for you. Now, how do I think that I know that I'm good at that? Because I've given it a go. And, and it's the proof is in the pudding, as they say. Not only with the homes that I designed, but also in my show. I mean, what you're asking people to do in stand-up is you're asking a room full of strangers to themselves and to you to have a simultaneous involuntary reaction to the words that you have chosen. Now, when you can make 1,000, 2,000, 800, 1,500, 3,000, 80 people laugh instantly, simultaneously at what you've said, that should give you some sort of confidence that you've hit onto something.
Well, you've just defined what it means to create symphony, to harmonize people through comedy, yeah?
That's what it is.
And I think that if you weren't so damn Australian, you'd hear that a little bit different. But what makes me excited in the closing minutes that we have is that there's so much more to you. In the next half of your life, as you celebrate hitting the halfway mark, if it were, I'm so delighted, but I'm excited of all the new things that are going to come. I'm certain to see you on Netflix. I'm certain to see you on TV. I'm certain to see productions that are curating scripts and opportunities and stories by your hand. As you look over the next 50 years, as you're just weeks away from celebrating your 50th, what excites you most about the next great half ahead?
Well, someone said to me the other day, "Are you ever coming to America?" I said, "This is my 20th anniversary tour of America." He said, "Well, I've just discovered you." That excites me. It excites me that people have never even heard of me. I like, some people would think that would hurt my ego. No, I've got a professional ego, but a professional ego is different to a shallow, materialistic ego. And it excites me that people haven't heard of me.
Yeah.
And yet, enough people have heard of me for me to make a career and keep a career going for 30 years. But imagine where we're going to go with this, Richard.
100%. Well, I'm delighted to be a part of the Avati train. I'm forcing myself right to the front of the cabin to see it through. I'm looking forward to the tour and the show. When's the first one that people should be looking forward to for when I was your age?
So we start in North America on the 20th of September in Montreal. We've just released 2 extra shows there. And then we move our way down to Southern Ontario. And then in between, I go to America twice.
That's your zigzag and zip.
I'm zigzagging, zipping across North America. And it's going to be great. We just released another 3 shows today in Toronto. It's great. It's fantastic.
Amazing. Well, at the time of the release of this conversation, a courageous conversation to all our friends, be sure to hit the link. Check out Joe Avati. Follow him on all social media. Let your friends and family know that they need a good laugh to get their life back in check, because promise you that Joe will do just that. Joe, a real pleasure to be hanging out with you.
Thanks, man.
Good time today, brother.
Thank you, man.
Such a pleasure, man.
Thank you. Thanks, Richard.